Okay, Eric, give us our trivia question.
Okay, so this one, the book that I have, the trivia book that I have, most of the questions are quite short, but some of them are like key questions, and they're longer. Now I know that we've been writing them out in the beginning of the videos, so the only thing that we should only write out the very last bit of this, but I'm going to read the whole thing, and then get something to chew on till the end. So, in the episode "The Savage Curtain," the rock-based life forms of the planet Excalibia had vastly different ethics than the species of the USS Enterprise they encountered. The Excalibians kidnapped Kirk and Spock and damaged the Enterprise warp engines. The Starfleet officers were forced to join other heroes from galactic history to battle some of the greatest villains in a fight to the death, so that also the Excalibians could learn about philosophies such as good and evil. To raise the stakes, the Excalibians made a deal that if the good side did not win, then the Enterprise would be destroyed by its already damaged antimatter engines. Opposing them were some of the worst villains in Federation history: Genghis Khan, Kahless, the father of the Klingon Empire, 21st century despot Colonel Green, and Zora of Tiburon. What were Zora's contributions to the annals of galactic evil? That's the question. What were Zora's contributions to the annals of galactic evil? Here are our options. A despotic empire. B, the seduction and murder of her powerful husband. C, cruel scientific experiments on humanoids. Or D, her overthrow of the Tiburon Federation. If you're a boring person who has no friends and has no intention of making new ones,
I think we're really honing in on our audience.
And I know a few grandmas will do it too.
Can I have a rebuttal to this?
Welcome to A Piece of the Action. I'm Micah.
I'm Eric.
I'm Greg.
And today we are going to continue our discussion of Board Game Geek, their most voted on games. And this week we're looking at the game Ticket to Ride. Ticket to Ride came out, I believe it was 2004, so it's been around a while. Another very, very popular game that I know personally. I know a lot of people who played it. I think I've played this game once or twice myself, and a game that I hear referenced quite a bit. So Eric and Greg, you guys sat down, you played Ticket to Ride, and we're ready to get your thoughts on it. So first of all, Eric, why don't you start out by talking to us about the premise of Ticket to Ride?
Okay. In Ticket to Ride, you are attempting to build train routes from particular metropolises around the United States. That's the first version of there are many maps that you can play on, but in the original it's just the US. And so that's basically it. You're trying to fulfill specific routes that you draw at the beginning of the game. But yeah, you're basically you're building trains.
Okay. All right. So seems pretty simple. I noticed when I looked at sort of the synopsis for it, I think Board Game Geek gave it a weight of like 1.8 or something. It's super, super low weight. Is that correct?
Sounds right to me. Yeah.
Checks out.
Sounds right. Okay. How do you guys feel like it did, first of all, then when it comes to, I guess, are you playing the part of like you're building up a railroad company? Is that the idea, or is it more abstract than that?
No, you're not. It's just abstract. You're just
abstract.
You're just laying down.
You're just laying track.
There is a story behind it. There's a whole story behind it, technically.
Okay.
I mean, technically, you're all playing. All your pieces are one color, so are a specific color. So you are the red train company or the green train.
No. Listen. Eric doesn't know theme. He doesn't have the imagination for this game.
Right. Yeah.
He
Yeah.
immediately sees
You've always
trains, and he
been the
immediately thinks
big on theme. So
it must be a train company.
Mhm.
No, technically, I think you are. It was like some in the early 1900s. Like there was like some contest about who could travel to the most cities, and some guy
Are you
named
making this up?
Fogg. No. Hey, hold on, I got.
I haven't looked at. I haven't looked this up at all.
I got the rule book right here. There's a whole story here.
Well, I should have
Oh, I
written.
see. That's almost. That looks to be almost 4 paragraphs in length.
A $1 million winner-takes-all competition to see who can travel to the most cities in 7 days. But the game doesn't have that feel at all. But there is a story there. No, it is incredibly abstract.
All right, I stand corrected. I thought it was just a generic train building game.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know there's all this theme and premise.
Yeah.
Change my entire review.
Right. well. So let me ask you guys about that then. We have. It seems like we have been playing a lot of games that, and when I say we, I mean you two, have been playing a lot of games that are really way more system over any sort of theme, right? That was, we talked last week about Dominion, which you said was the least themed game that we played thus far. Before that, you said the same thing about Seven Wonders. Really, I think all of these, Pandemic, probably of what we've considered so far has been the strongest.
Pandemic was pretty thematic.
Pandemic was pretty thematic, but it seems like everything else.
I think it's hard to. I don't think it's right to compare those two things. I think you can have. It's not like theme or what was the word you used? Theme or mechanics.
Right. Well,
because you can't just have if you just have a theme and no mechanics, you're reading a book. So obviously we're here playing board games, and I think that all the themes so far they've been light. I guess that's your point, right?
Right. Well, because of course, every game will have mechanics. The question is how much might they then also dial up theme if they do it at all. So my thought was that looking just sort of at first blush at this game, Ticket to Ride, was that maybe you guys would come away with the impression that there was more theme to this, that there was more of a feel that you were actually somehow interacting with the railroad system. What do you think? Is that true or no?
This probably now takes the crown from Dominion. No, I
don't know.
I mean, the thing about it is, the lighter a game gets, I feel the more difficult it becomes to really get a deep thematic
emergent theme.
You know what I mean? It's just it's an abstract game for the most part, and I like that. That's fine with me. But
yeah, we know you like that. I think that's.
I'm not going to say that this is a theme heavy game by any means, but I don't know if I would say it's the least themed game that we've played so far. I think that's just because there's a map, and like what I said before in the Pandemic. No, I can't remember what it was, but one of our previous reviews. I like maps. I like to be able to see that my train now goes from St. Louis to Detroit, and things like that. So, whereas with Dominion, there's very there's not a lot of theme there either. But I think that they're kind of on par with the amount of theme.
Okay, so very light. Greg, sounds like you pretty much agree with that. What about then, as far as the system goes? Greg, why don't you tell us what is it when you go to play it? What are you, other than in general terms, building rail lines? How specifically is that implemented? What are you having to think about when you look at the game?
So there's basically three things you can do in your turn, but there's two you're doing most of the time. But you're collecting cards. You're trying to collect sets of colors. It's almost Rummy-esque, I think.
Yeah, so
that side of the card collecting, and then the other thing you can do is you can use those colors to complete routes hoping to connect these tickets. Like you have tickets in the beginning of the game that says if you connect Los Angeles to Dallas, you get this many points, right? So that's what you're trying to do. I think how the game feels, if we're talking about that now, is there's a lot of options available to you. Like you don't have to start like in Los Angeles and build, one train at a time. You can start on any route that you need, and you have up to 3 of these tickets in the beginning. There's also cards over here you can draw. There's a lot of colors you can draw. So there's a lot of options available to you. So there's a lot of tension in this game that comes from, okay, which of these routes do I need to prioritize? So like Eric is going where I need to go. Is he look like he's coming down from New York and I need this route? Should I prioritize that route? Should I be collecting that cards? I see Eric's picking blue cards. That's a blue route I need. Maybe he's going for that route. So there's always constant prioritization about when do you take a route? When do you start collecting cards for something? When do you feel like, well, that seems safe. I can get to that later on in the game. So there's a lot of tension there between the players, between what you prioritize and what you think other people are going to prioritize.
So would you say, because last time we talked about Dominion kind of being a race, do you feel a race aspect to it, or is it more complicated than that?
No, I don't think it's a race so much. It's because you don't know where people are going. It's a matter of, is it because you can't play all your routes at once, right? You can play one route a turn maximum, or you can draw cards. So it's not like you can just complete your entire. You have to figure out which part of this route. I got like 10 links here that I need to complete. Otherwise, by the end of the game, I'm going to be in a hole.
Right.
So then it's a matter of which of these links do I need to do now? Because once someone takes the link, you can't do it. And now I got to go way around them to do the same thing. Now it's much more inefficient. So it's not so much a race unless, maybe there could be a race feel, like if you see, like if I saw Eric is going for this route for sure. Like I just figured, okay, he obviously needs that link. He's trying to collect more blue cards now. Then it could become more of a race-ish thing. But it's definitely not the core feeling of it to me.
Okay. So what would you say then is kind of the core engagement then for it? Is it because is it a puzzle? Does it feel like it's a puzzle to solve, or are there not enough pieces visible for it to be a puzzle? Is it like a purely tactical consideration where you're just sort of looking at your hand and trying to take your best guess as to what the other players are going to do? Is it strategy? Is it I guess I'm sure like in the other episodes we'll talk about player interaction. But what is the what do you think is the main interaction, the main reason why people engage with the game and enjoy it when they do?
You're fighting for routes on an actual board, right? You're all sharing the same space. There's a central board, and you're all fighting for route connections there. So, I want to call it a puzzle so much as it is learning how to prioritize. And it's just a learning process of knowing what to prioritize. Which routes do I prioritize here? Which of these are going to get taken most quickly? You can see what colors people are taking, right? And there's certain sections of your route that become like this one becomes more important than the rest. But all of that's kind of subtle, I guess. Everyone's going to approach that differently. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I guess that's the appeal of the game. There's no one way to solve the route, I guess. Mm-hmm. It depends on what you think is important. Which part of your route do you think is the most important? That's what everyone's going to have a different decision to make on that.
So is it set up in such a way then that I guess what I'd be curious about is, so you're looking at the cards you have, you're looking at the routes you need to create. How much of the mental overhead of contemplating what you're going to do on your turn is devoted to just sort of you solving the board that's out there for yourself, versus how much of it is spent sort of contemplating what other players might potentially be trying to do? How much do you have to think about what they're doing, would you say?
I think player interaction in this game is for this level of a game, this weight of a game, is pretty high.
Mhm.
And I would go as far as to say, aside from maybe Catan, is the most player interaction of a game we've talked about so far.
Mhm.
How to get your routes connected is super easy, right? You want to take the most direct route.
Right.
The complication comes from when other players are starting to lay their routes, right? I mean, you have to figure out where other people are going, which routes do you take. Almost all the tension of this game comes from the other players, not from your own puzzle, because there's no puzzle on the board itself.
Mhm.
It's what other players are going to be doing.
Okay. All right. Eric, what do you think as far as when you were playing? What type of strategies were percolating for you?
Yeah, I agree that it's this is probably a close contender with Catan for player interaction. I would say of the descriptors you mentioned, it's probably more tactical because there's not a lot of strategy going on here. It's more like, can I remember what what cards Greg has in his hand? Now I want to guess where he's trying to go. That gives me some insight into what routes he might be laying down. Maybe that impacts me. Maybe it doesn't, because maybe he's trying to build something, on the West Coast, and I'm trying to get to New York. So maybe that applies. Maybe it doesn't. It's a matter of deciding. Really, what it comes down to on your turn is just deciding: do I want to pick up cards or do I want to lay track?
Mhm.
That's really those are your two main options. You can also get new tickets. So if you think that you're doing really well and you're going to fulfill your tickets, you can try to get more tickets. In fact, when you go to get more tickets, you're obligated to take at least one of them. And as Greg alluded to previously, if you don't fulfill all of your tickets, those are going to count against you at the end of the game. So you want to make sure that you're going to be able to fulfill your tickets. But most of what you do is going to be collecting cards from either the draw pile, or there's a bunch of cards, like five or six cards that are visible. There's a bunch of cards that are visible that you can draw from, or you can decide, on my turn I'm going to use cards from my hand to lay down track. And so because of that, there is no puzzle to solve. It's just you're looking at what you have, you're looking at what the board has. The only thing you need to consider is what other people might be shooting for.
How?
And I think that's an interesting nuance, actually, that
Yeah.
Eric's bringing up. I want to talk about
Yeah.
there are cards on display. So part of it too is not just should I take this route or this route or this route, but sometimes it's like, okay, I really need this blue. I need any blue tickets or any blue cards. And then you look over at the display and it's like, oh man, there's a blue card there. I really want that. Do I have time to take it this turn, or will someone take this route that I really want to place? So there's those kind of decisions too, because you can't do both. You can't pick up cards and place track. So sometimes there's that whole deliberation about, do I take this stuff that I know I'm going to need in the future, or do I just hurry up and take this route while I can? So there's some of that too, not just among players, but between your two choices you have, which one do you do?
Mhm. Okay. So I think it's Eric, you mentioned that it feels tactical as opposed to strategic, and just so that I make sure that I'm on the same page with you, I think um, I know we've had discussions about tactics versus strategy before. I don't know if we were on the same page necessarily when we had those discussions, but just so we're on the same page at this point. So when I say tactics, what I'm thinking about is sort of not planning for the future, but sort of making the best possible instantaneous assessment of the state of the board right now. And, who knows what random cards or dice roll or whatever it's going to be will come later. You can't plan much beyond this turn, but I can optimize this turn for how the environment is, versus a strategic game like a perfect information game like chess or Go are very strategic, because you can look at it and you can say, okay, if I move here, then that has to happen, and then that next thing has to happen, and you can go sort of temporally. Is that just in a more general sense, is that what you guys mean when you say tactic and strategy, or is there a way you'd like to refine that?
In a general sense, I think that works as a rough and ready definition. I think that tactics, I think both Go and chess are both tactical and strategic, in the sense that you have to. I don't know. I mean, it's a big conversation and an interesting one. But it's kind of like, it's like, well, let's say I want to lose some weight. My strategy is going to be the keto diet, let's say.
Right.
But on a given day, do I eat the donut or do I avoid the donut?
Yeah.
That's the tactics.
Yeah.
So the strategy is more
I know
overarching.
you, so I know what the answer is.
The overarching strategy is going to be just basically like, how do I intend to get to the winning scenario?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the tactics is going to be more, like you said, more on the board in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this whole game is all on the board in front of you, almost all of it.
Okay.
I think my favorite quote that's often quoted about strategy and tactics is the chess master, who said that tactics is knowing what to do when there is something to do. Strategy is knowing what to do when there is nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
That to me makes the most sense. Strategy is obviously your long-range goals. Tactics is what your short-term goals. I mean, is the way of looking at it. So basically, I see strategy, of course, as like how are you going to win, and tactics are your steps to get there, I guess. And when you compare like a strategic game versus a tactical game, it's just how often are you thinking of either of those things. So a strategic game would be a game that you're thinking long-term often. And a tactical game is a game where you're thinking short-term often. What am I doing right now? I would say Ticket to Ride is fairly tactical. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah, it sounds like it changes so much based on what the other people do, that it would be hard for it to be profitable for you to spend a lot of time developing specific long-term plans that are just going to get completely upended every turn.
Well, a general plan would be to make sure you get a lot of tickets that are conducive to each other. So if I'm like, when you look at your tickets at the beginning of the game, you have an option to get rid of some of them. And then when you get new tickets as an option, you can always get more tickets. You take a bunch and you choose at least one. You would want to make sure that that you can use a route that you have to make anyway for multiple purposes. So that's one thing that's like very, very it's very obvious that you want to do that. So when you see a ticket that is on the East Coast and you're going from Miami to Boston, you want to get more stuff that's on the East Coast that can kind of like dogleg off of that and make that work. So that's an easy one. And then you want to do what I didn't do. I rarely play this game. Actually, Jeremy won.
Jeremy won again. Or no,
but what I did was I basically just like telegraphed completely where I was heading.
Yeah.
So I started up in St. Louis. I can't remember what it was.
Somewhere in Canada.
St. Paul.
He just built.
And I'm just like, I'm just going to make a line, and here I come, and you know where I'm heading. And I realized it about halfway through. I was like, this is stupid.
The only time I've ever seen people use that tactic was children. Because they don't understand that you can't build any route.
So, but I did beat you, Greg.
You did beat me. For a different, it wasn't your doing though.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, okay. What happened?
Well, basically,
Jeremy, who's a newer player, he was very aggressive at finishing.
No, he wasn't, Greg. You let him win.
No, I let him win, but it's like part of it was I got a ticket that but there's a lot of reasons. I mean, basically though, I got a ticket that I couldn't complete because I misread one of my tickets, so it took me longer to complete that one than I thought it was going to. And then I got a ticket that I thought I could complete, but Jeremy ended up finishing the game sooner than I was anticipating, and it's probably my fault. I wasn't looking at his trains, and so then I got negative points for that.
How does the game end?
The game
When
ends when someone runs out of trains. They have 2 left.
Oh,
Two or less left.
all right.
You start with how many do you start with, Greg? 30.
Oh, I don't know how many.
Ton.
You start with quite a few.
But basically, you want to make sure that your tickets that you're trying to fulfill that they synchronize, and you want to not play like you're walking down the street. You want to play piecemeal here and there,
Mhm.
and kind of fill it in slowly. But
Want to build a moyo?
right. But a really, really important thing is that you want to make sure you get the critical stuff that you need. Like if there are particular cities that you're going to need to go through, you better get a route off of that early, and then fill in the details later, because otherwise you're not going to be able to fulfill your tickets. So those are the basics.
Okay.
As far as
How was the flow, like the turns and stuff? Did you have to?
It's super fast.
It's super fast. Like there's,
Yeah.
I guess, low
Super
weight
fast.
makes for quick turns.
Yeah.
Usually.
I mean, you can only do one thing: take cards or lay track.
Yeah.
Or take new tickets. I mean, it's just.
And there's not a lot of agonizing over where to lay your track.
No, I mean, I know we're sitting here talking about like strategy and tactics in a Ticket to Ride review, but this is, I mean, it's a pretty breezy game at the end
Yeah,
of
it's
the day.
really light.
I feel like we're overstating how much is here.
Yeah.
It's a pretty breezy game. So yeah,
it falls into the tactical, scheme of things, but it's not heavy tactical at all.
Okay.
It's not a heavy game.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so let's go ahead then and get into the good and the bad of Ticket to Ride. I'll start with you, Eric. What did you do good? Well, I guess that I should I say that? What did you do well?
Yeah, probably.
Right. Yeah. What did you do well?
It performed morally good actions in the following categories.
Okay.
Man, what did it do well? I'm not a big fan of this game, is the problem.
Yeah.
It's a game.
Mhm.
It does that. It
It didn't spray acid in your face.
it's not like a Jack in the Box or something. It's not a game.
Right.
But still a toy.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's a game, and I don't hate it. It's I do actually appreciate the tension that comes with what do I do on my turn. I'll say that. My favorite thing about this game is, do I take cards or do I lay track? That's like, okay, and which cards should I take? Because that's a signal. When I take a bunch of yellow cards, Greg might be thinking, okay, well, we're both working on the East Coast here, and I can't let him take a particular track. I need it. So maybe I need to draw from the deck and keep it hidden, because he wouldn't know what I take then. But then there's a chance that I don't get yellow cards, So there's that level of tension, and I appreciate that.
Do you feel like it, to just bounce off that a little bit, do you feel like it continues to have meaningful decisions throughout the course of the game? Are the decisions always...
Yeah, no, I do. I think that it doesn't... I mean, there's always going to be, in almost every game we play, there's going to be the, well, I'm too far behind, I possibly win. But
are they interesting decisions, or does it get to a
no,
point
they're not,
where it becomes automatic? Okay.
No, it doesn't become automatic. I don't
you're
think
playing your tracks one by one.
Shush.
In order, then they become automatic when you do it that way. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that was a stupid mistake. But no, the decisions aren't automatic. I just don't find them very interesting. It's
okay.
and I think that's just because I'm not really interested in the theme,
Mm-hmm.
And there's not many moving parts to this game. However, the moving parts that do exist, I think they do their job well.
Yeah. So that's interesting because you typically say you play games for theme. This game is themed better than Dominion was, but you like Dominion a lot better, even though it had no theme.
Wait till I get to the bad part.
Yeah. Well, that was a resounding good part for Ticket to Ride. So let's go to you, Greg. What do you think it did well?
All right. Well, I like a lot better than Eric.
Mhm.
Eric has no soul.
Right.
I mean,
I think we
it's,
established that last week.
You gotta approach these games. in a
Yes.
certain way, I think.
Tell me how I need to game, Greg.
Basically, how I talk about with Ticket to Ride, my tagline for Ticket to Ride is, if Grand Arbiter of the Universe told me, Greg, from now on, we've decided every family in the world must have a board game. It's a human right. And so every apartment you rent and every house you buy comes with a board game in it. Which game should that be? I would pick Ticket to Ride. Because it is one of the most accessible games that I've ever seen. It works. We've been talking about these other games like, oh, I could play with an 8-year-old and my grandma.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's necessarily true with all of those games. Ticket to Ride, literally anybody could play this game. I mean, so I brought out the rule book for that reason. I mean, this is the rule book. This is story that you don't need. This is the 2 pages of rules and a little half page in the back about scoring. That's the whole game. Anybody can take this game and learn it. Now, here's the thing with these super light family games. Typically, they tend to be like card games, like, I don't know, No Thanks or For Sale. Yeah, those are light to learn, but Ticket to Ride feels like a board game, right? There's a board in front of you. You're playing together. This is a game that I could easily see planning an evening over.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not a filler. It's a board game that anyone can play. And then on top of that, there is tension in Ticket to Ride. And tension, I value tension in games a lot. Like, that matters a lot to me. So for a game to be this weight, that virtually anyone can play and still give me some tension, it just hits all those marks to me for what I consider to be a good gateway game. And then on top of it, even more than that, I do feel there's a little bit of strategy in here. I'm not bored during the game. I think it responds to the group. Like, I think you can just play this. I'm going to put down trains here and put down trains here and not think about much of it and still enjoy it. Or you could learn every ticket in the deck and know where the routes are going and know which routes are people probably working on. There's like only 30 tickets, and some people do. You could start blocking people, making it a meaner game. It corresponds to the group. It plays 2 to 5 player. It plays all of those counts perfectly. There's not a bad count in the bunch. And the turns are super quick. I don't know, all of that combined together just makes, to me, a gateway game that I often pull out. Now, it's not a game I'm going to be like, call my gamer buddies over, let's get together and play some Ticket to Ride. But it works so well in so many groups. That's why I consider it to be a good game. It just works.
Yeah, it seems almost like it's a game, because you have the games like, think about like Monopoly, right? Which has been around forever, well before the current modern day board gaming, renaissance. But the rules to Monopoly are not exactly super simple. And it feels like Ticket to Ride it seems like the type of game that maybe could have been invented in the 50s by Milton Bradley or Parker Brothers and grown up and been one of those classic household family games like Scrabble or Monopoly or something like that is what it seems like.
I think one of the big shifts that we've seen is with those older games like Monopoly and Life. They're all about chance. They're all about dice rolls, right, and wheel spins. And I think one of the major shifts of modern day gaming has been to shift away from that. And so in that sense, there's very little randomness in Ticket to Ride. You're not rolling a die. You can choose. You have options as to if you want to draw from the random deck or if you want to draw from the good sized number of cards that are visible. So I think that's one of the main shifts in era that we're seeing, is a shift away from just pure randomness, pure dice chucking, like
Mhm.
Win or lose based on a die roll.
Right.
To
Shoots and
more,
ladders type thing.
yeah,
To your point about it being classic, I already think Ticket to Ride is a modern classic.
And I agree with that.
This is a game that's going to be in Target 30 years from now. It already is. It's I don't know. It's probably sold more than Catan, to be honest with you. This game is, if not, it's close. I mean, I don't know the numbers, but it's everywhere. I mean, everyone knows this game.
Before Greg, before I ask you about the bad, I'll just ask you, because you kind of touched on it a little bit, and your like from what we talked about last week, kind of a particular point of contention a lot of times for you. You mentioned with games is the level of player interaction. How do you feel about the player interaction in Ticket to Ride?
Well, I think it's good for its weight level.
Mm-hmm.
That's what matters to me. I mean, yes, there's more cutthroat games at this weight level, but they're not games I would necessarily pull out with a group. I mean, these are games that you never get blown out in this game, right? I mean, you could, but I mean, for the most part, everyone feels like they're involved most of the time, because you don't reveal the tickets to the end, so you don't know, well, maybe they didn't complete their tickets. Like, it keeps you in the game to the end. Player interaction is enough. It's enough. The tension comes from player interaction. It comes from, you have a map that you're fighting position for. And I think for a game that's just enough to make me feel comfortable pulling out in nearly any group, it has that perfect balance of player interaction. For me, it's not too much. It's not mean player interaction, but it's not so light that I'm just bored because I'm playing by myself. Right? It's kind of that nice sweet spot.
Nice. Okay, very good. Well, let's go then to the bad. What did Ticket to Ride not do well, Greg?
I have a couple points. They're not like major. I actually brought cards out. So just as a note. So the base game of Ticket to Ride, the US map, comes with these cards here. I'm just going to point this out. See this?
Mm-hmm.
These are like these little tiny cards. I find these super annoying to shuffle. So I rarely have component issues unless they're negative like this. Now, for me, there's a solution to that, and I rarely recommend expansions, but there's an expansion to the game, 1910, that replaces all the train cards with normal-sized train cards. Mm-hmm. And I almost consider this to be like a mandatory expansion, because I hate shuffling these little cards. I hate holding a hand, because in Ticket to Ride, you have a massive hand of cards often. I hate holding a huge hand of little tiny cards. So that's one...
Postage stamps in your hand.
Yeah, it's just annoying. But anyways, but that's solvable if you just want to spend more money. So there's that. The other one that's more of a gameplay issue, I do agree with Eric. There's not a whole lot of luck. Yes, there's the card draw, but I feel like you have enough options, and you have the display, and you're drawing so many cards over the course of the game, it all balances out. And there's enough for you to do that the randomness isn't a big deal. Where it can become a deal, though, is when you're drawing tickets. And I've seen times where people, towards the end of the game, will draw all 3 tickets, and they're like, oh, hey, I have this one completed already. They didn't have to do anything. They just got like 15 points doing nothing because they just happened to draw the right tickets. You know what I mean? So there is that. There could be
a little swingy.
It could be a little swingy sometimes when you play. And I'm not, at this weight, I'm okay with that. But that is something to keep in mind. That whereas there is not a lot of randomness, ticket pulls can be random. And I've seen people, like, if they feel like they're behind, they'll just start drawing tickets like crazy, hoping to get those kind that are super easy to fulfill. Which is fine. It's a valid strategy. But other than that, I don't really have any major complaints with it.
Okay.
But what it's trying to do.
All right, Eric. What about you? What did Ticket to Ride do poorly?
Well, like I said, I don't really like the game because of but this is completely personal. I just don't find trains very interesting. So, there's been a big push for train games. I know, and I don't find train games very interesting. A lot of the negatives that I'm going to have are just me. So I mean, take it with a grain of salt. But I just when I'm playing the game, I find it kind of boring. And on top of that, the kicker is that I do think that it's a little too mean, or it can be.
Oh, see, I like that.
Yeah, I know you do, and so this is
Because you're a
personal.
mean
But
person.
I don't like the ease with which a player who's perhaps not winning, or 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 just wants to be mean. I'm fine. I understand that this is a contentious point because there is a solid strategy of I'm going to occasionally block my opponents. That's okay. But I'll tell you what, it's really, really frustrating. I think when you're near to completion on a route and somebody has figured that out, and then on their turn plays lays down 2 tracks or 1 track or whatever, and totally messes up your plan, and now you got to spend 6 turns collecting different cards so that you can go a different way and connect your route up. That the level of frustration that I feel when that happens is not outweighed by the joy that I get from playing a train game. So that's my big issue with Ticket to Ride. I just think that it's like, especially if you're, I don't know, maybe I'm
Too
too
much potential
hot-headed.
for it to aggravate you.
It just, I would not want to play this game with people who have kind of a short fuse, because when you play a couple of tracks down that block them, they've worked. I mean, think about it. They've spent the rest of the game building track from Albany down to like New York, and there's this one little track that they need to connect, and you're like, boom. What did I say? New York, Albany down to Miami, and you like, play one little track and it's done, and now you've got to like, oh man, that's so frustrating.
Yeah.
More than that, it's I mentioned another separate issue is I mentioned that there's not a lot of decisions here. I agree with Greg. This is actually a full board game, but there's not a lot of moving parts, is the way I phrased it. Okay, this game is over $60 on
Really?
Amazon right now.
Mm-hmm.
Just the base game is $57.99. When you get that shipped out to you, it's going to be over $60. I don't think that's worth it. If this game was $40, okay, but it's a little expensive for the game that you get for the decisions.
Are you talking about like from a point of view of components and production value and stuff like that?
No, I'm just talking about the
boring
game
train game that ticks you off.
A boring train game that ticks me off. I don't want to pay $60-$70 for that.
Okay.
Now maybe I'm sure that there's deals out there to get.
Yeah.
That's just retail price on Amazon that I just looked up right now. So, yeah.
I have a rebuttal to this.
Yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, if you're paying $60 for Ticket to Ride, you don't know what you're doing.
I just looked it up, man. It's Amazon Prime, $57.99.
You don't just look up one deal and then you're done.
I know. I realize that there's options out there.
Easily get this game for like $40. I traded mine. I mean, I got it for a trade. But anyways, I'm not going to argue against Eric on this, but I think it's an important point of distinction between our play styles and how, if you're out there in non-YouTube land, how you might approach this game. Just everything that Eric described about how that frustration about getting, and I don't even think it necessarily has to be like they intentionally block you. It could just be like that's part of their route and they want to take it. I think that's more likely, in fact. That point that he's talking about being frustrated with is exactly the reason why I like this game as a gateway game. Because so many, especially modern board games, soften the game for people like Eric who can't take punishment. But I love that tension because it is frustrating. Yes, like if someone takes that one thing that you need to finish your route, it is infuriating. But that tension of that potential is what I like about the game. It's that I need to really keep my head on here, because if I'm not paying attention to what people are going to do, They could take this route, and it's going to make me upset. So I better figure out what I need to take now. I better prioritize these correctly. I love that tension. And in a gateway game.
Just a brief rebuttal there, Greg. I don't hate, it just feels a little take that-y for a game that doesn't have and I'm fine with take that, except that it doesn't have a lot of depth, and it's a theme that I'm not interested in, and it's maybe more expensive than it needs to be. So in a game like that, like me, my favorite game in the world is Go.
I know.
Go,
I'm poking fun at you.
Heavily frustrated at that. But the reason I'm okay with that is because there's so much depth there. There's just not enough depth in Ticket to Ride to keep me interested. And I'm not a big fan of the train thing.
Yeah.
So
I'm not going to say it's like the deepest game in the world, right? It's not, for sure.
Yeah.
But I disagree that it's take that, because it's foreseeable.
It when I played, is it? Like if you're playing, you mentioned before that this is a kind of game that you could play with grandma and an 8-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know a lot of 8-year-olds who are going to play in a take that style. So if and I know a few grandmas who will do it too.
Sure.
So
I want to play with those people.
No, that's horrible.
But it's not take that. It's not take that if it's meditated. It's planned out. They're thinking about it. You see them taking the tickets. Yeah. You're like, oh. And here's the other thing too, is that's part of the thing. It's like that's an interesting part, because in my mind, when I look at my routes, I go, I should probably get these short ones done soon, because those are the ones that people can take quickly. Whereas these big 6-train routes, I can wait on, because I can see if someone's collecting that many. I can watch people see if they're collecting 6 blue cars, right? But I don't know. But that's part of the interest to me, is that tension. Like I said, tension's a big deal, and that frustration you're talking about is what fuels that tension in Ticket to Ride. And I want to point out, I'm talking about a gateway game here. All my favorite games have much more depth and tension in them. But for a gateway game, I feel like it's got a nice amount. And that's why I'm willing to play it. Yeah.
If you're a boring person who has no friends and has no intention of making new ones, then feel free to play Ticket to Ride.
It is not that mean. You're making it sound like diplomacy or something.
So last week we had board game recommendations for empty, soulless people. This week for boring people with no friends. So we're really I think we're really honing in on our audience here. That's great. I mean, it sounds like I think I see both sides of it. On one hand, Greg, it makes total sense that you can't have tension without stakes, right? And the higher the stakes, the higher the tension. So if it's possible that I can do something to you that causes all of your effort through the whole game to turn out to be wasted, then that's very high stakes. On the other hand, that would be very frustrating to have to walk away from the game feeling like that everything you've done was essentially for nothing, especially if there was any degree to which it couldn't be foreseen, which it was just kind of out of the blue, which it sounds like if you can't see what's in people's hands and you can't see what they draw, you can sort of hypothesize that it's possible, but do you really have the working memory to keep in mind all of those possibilities? Probably yes and no. Probably to a degree you kind of can foresee it. And if
I'll give you an example of a game I played not too long ago. I was playing this game, and this is my fault. I was stupid. Mm-hmm. I made it pretty obvious that so one of the big East Coast gets clogged up really fast. So learning how to get your East Coast tickets down quickly is nice, important. But there's a connection between Seattle and Vancouver. That's one train car. It's double route, but it's one train car. I've seen more potential table flippages at that link. I remember I was playing a game and I was stupid. I made it pretty obvious that I was needing that connection, but no one was on anywhere near me. So I was like, I think I have time. And it's a double route. We're playing a 5-player game. So I got time. If someone puts one down, I can get the other. And then the next guy saw that and he's like, you know what? I'm going to put this one down. And the next player saw it and she was like, I'm going to take that other one down. And it was infuriating. It was, but at the same time, I can't help
your own fault.
I just thought it was hilarious, and I love stuff like that. That they thought I was so far ahead that was worthy of them wasting both of their turns to block me off on that. I mean, I love stuff like that. To me, it's like, okay, that hurts, but good play. Good play.
All right. Okay, good. All right, well, let's go to then our final thoughts on Ticket to Ride. What's the final verdict? Like it or not? Would you recommend it or not? And we'll start with Eric.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I don't like it for mostly personal reasons. And I do think it's a valid addition to what we've been doing here, looking over the most popular games on Board Game Geek. I think that it's there for a reason. It's light enough. All these games that we've talked about so far are really light. This is really light. Yeah, but for its lightness, it does pack a significant amount of tension and decision making per turn into the game. It's just, for me personally, I don't like it because of theme and because of the amount of frustration that it can cause.
Okay, very good. Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I think I pretty much said. I think this is one of the better gateway games, and especially when we're talking about gateway games that are at the extreme light end. Right? I mean, there's other games I'd pull up before Ticket to Ride if I felt like the players could handle something a little meatier. But at this far end of the scale, Ticket to Ride is one of the best games that I know of at pulling out. Depending, no matter who's at my house, I feel like I can pull a Ticket to Ride. So for that reason, I tend to rate it 7.5.
7.5. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So
Very good.
as far as my number system, I've been thinking about this lately.
Yeah.
So 8 to 9 and 10 are games that, if I could choose the group and the game, these are the games that I would pick to play. And 8 being, these are ones I would recommend. Sometimes 10 being, you don't have to ask me, I want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
6 and 7 are the games that I pull out thinking about the group itself. Like, maybe I wouldn't pick these games on a personal level, like if I could pick any group. But if I have a group over that says, well, this will work for this group, these are games that I will pull out often, and it doesn't bother me. 4s and 5s are games that I would never recommend, no matter the group. But if I was at someone's place and they pulled them out, I would play. 2s and 3s are games that if someone brought out, I would try to find an excuse to do something else. And 1s are games that they're not games to me. They're just broken for whatever reason. So that's kind of like my scale. So Ticket to Ride just edges. Like, it's never a game I would pull out. Like, if I could just play any game tonight, it's never a game that I would recommend. But if we have a group of people over and I'm like, hey, I think Ticket to Ride will work here, I will often recommend it.
So just shy of that level where you'd want to play it yourself. So, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. You're not one of those people who won't give anything a 10, are you?
No, I have a couple 10s.
Okay, yeah, because I think that's bogus when people do that. Because otherwise, why have a number in the?
Because otherwise, your 9.5 is your 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. There's always going to be a 10.
Yeah. So, okay. All right. Well, so that's it then for Ticket to Ride. Thank you guys for taking a look at that. So check it out if you have not. It is definitely a game. I think that you're right. It is a game that's we're going to see for a long, long time sticking around, and chances are you will eventually run into somebody who has played it or wants to play it. So check it out if you have not. What are we playing next week?
We are playing Agricola.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Eric has played, so I'm going to introduce him.
Never played Agricola.
You never have played it, really?
Nope.
If you have enjoyed our disagreements in this video, I suspect you'll love them next week. If I'm just going to predict the future. If I'm going to predict the future. But I don't know. Maybe Eric will surprise me. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see.
All right. Well, so look for that next time. Until then, this has been A Piece of the Action.
Question. It's tough.
Yeah.
This is the one they fought Abraham Lincoln and Sirach, right?
Yep.
They were the
I
good
had
side.
forgotten that Kalis was one of the
I did forget that.
the all-time bad guys.
Which is funny because I don't think that's canon anymore, is it? I think they retconned that.
Wasn't
I don't
there a
know
whole
what
thing,
he would.
Wasn't there a whole thing in is it DS9 or Void?
No, he came back. Yeah, they
Yeah,
comes
Kalis
back. They
came
resurrect
back,
him.
and he was,
He's kind of cool.
Yeah, he was not a horrible dude
Hmm.
all the time.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm gonna go with, I don't remember what her deal was. I think I'm gonna go with C though. That sounds
The
most
science
Star Trek-y.
experiments?
Yeah.
Cruel scientific
That's
experiments.
sort of
on
what I was
humans.
thinking. I feel like murdering your husband is just like, that's just, lots of people do that.
Well, yes, it's true, but this was
Okay.
the '60s, so I'm
That's
sure
what I was
that
about
would
to
have
say.
been-
I'm
this is
actually,
like-
I'm actually
Gotta
going to
be-
go with B myself. I'm guessing. I'm going to guess B for me. I'll put down C, but yeah, I think B is what it is, just because it was the
So-
'60s.
Yeah, so again, I'm gonna say the reason I don't remember it, but I think what they'd have to do is that they want to come up with a variety of things, and so you already have like sort of the empire builder with Genghis Khan and Kahless, so I don't think the despotic empire. I feel like it'd just be,
Hmm.
you know what I mean,
Yeah.
more of the same. And I think the writers would be trying to show that they were pulling a variety of evil people. So my guess would also be the scientific experiment one, because that would be sufficiently evil to get on the list, but different
Mhm.
enough. That's my
Yeah.
that's my
Okay, we're gonna go with that. I still think it's B, just because she's the only woman, the only female.
Yeah, I mean,
in
it
the
could have
group.
been something like she didn't have dinner ready in time or something.
Right? Yeah.
Right? So,
All right,
it's
let's
pretty
go with
evil.
C. Cruel scientific experiments on humanoids. Oh, hold on.
Are you entering it into your tricorder?
C is correct. Cruel scientific experiments on humanoids.
It just
They
sounded
weren't that
very
bad,
Star
I
Trek-y.
guess.
It just sounded Star Trek-y.
Yeah.
Okay.